Any comment on that? Is there any type of independent?
Yeah, I think I try to respond to that. We have an IV&V contractor. The state holds the contract to that. And they are down in LA 3 to 4 days a week. They answer to us and our federal partners. We get weekly status reporting and monthly status reporting. And I'll tell you quite honestly, and LA has been very transparent with us, is that we think many factors drove requesting a 1 month delay in a major automation project like this is nothing. And I think you've had some discussions. Sometimes when things aren't working, you just shut it down. That's not the case. We are on a path to success. We're on a path to success. They report into a green, yellow, red status reporting. We meet with them on Mondays. We walk through all the criteria, all the identified risks, and determine that we felt that their test effort was just big. It wasn't that it wasn't doing well, but just the massive amount of resources needed for that. It moved into a red, and to be honest with you, the director of LA County, Will Lightbourne, and Todd, we have now monthly meetings at the highest level to share the facts.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate the update. This is a update only in today's agenda. And just to underscore and you did address this, the extension of the pilot go live by 1 month, you indicate that that doesn't involve extra cost. It's just an adjustment within the contract. Is that accurate?
Yes, yeah, confirming that. No change to cost, schedule, or scope.
Great. Well, thank you. We're going to move now to the electronic benefit transfer, EBT3 project. And I think you're going to guide us through that as well.
Right, and there's really, I'll divide the discussion, if I could, into two things. One is involving the RFP and our budget change request. We are in what we call EBT3. It's the third time that we're procuring for services for electronic benefit transfer services. First contract was with JP Morgan. Second contract and current contract is with Xerox. We are just at the very end of pre-solicitation. We did a significant stakeholder outreach to develop the requirements for that RFP. It is currently with our federal stakeholder, FNS. They have reviewed several iterations of this. They have until June the 23rd for their final comments, and we plan to release that out into the community. The schedule for that RFP is to release in June or July. Intent to award will happen in November or December of this year. We plan to do contract execution in late spring of 16 and then go live for 2017. We're just finishing up the 7th year of a 7-year core contract, and we have executed 3 one-year contracts. If we award a contract and we have several opportunities, as we always do with RFPs, incumbent or a new vendor, if you will. I wanted to share with you, you may or may not know, Senator Hawley discussed the lack of vendor communities out there that do a lot of these work efforts. We previously had JP Morgan, Xerox previously was ACS, a smaller subcontractor, FIS, and those have been 3 of the primary players, if you will. JP Morgan left the market. In fact, they had 18 states. They made a decision to leave the market, but we're encouraged that we're still going to have a highly competitive bid, if you will. So with that, we have a lot of experience. We did not add any resources to the RFP. We have a very, very good team. This is the 3rd time they've gone through this. But when we do the intent for award, there'll be about an 18-month planning period, implementation period, where we need to prepare whether it's the incumbent or a new vendor. Our experience, both from the initial implementation and the second transition from JP Morgan to Xerox, we found that that time frame was very good. What we are requesting is $1.6 million for 7 full-time staff and 2 part-time staff with very specialized skills in transaction processing that allows them to come in. And so let me just share some of the activities that are involved in that, because it's extremely complex. There's the vendor interface development that needs to, and there's lots of interfaces. Talking about the complexity, Senator Stone, is that some of these systems speak with 18 different systems. When you use your debit card at Applebee's, you went out to dinner, if you will, it's miraculous that within that quick it's approved. And it may go through 4 or 5 what we call third-party processors. It's very complex, and that needs to be fully tested. We want to build out the support for the infrastructure, and of course we have a strong relationship with all 58 of our counties. We administer this on their behalf, and each one of those counties has to do a reconciliation. We have interfaces with our consortia. We have printers out in the counties that produce the EBT cards. There's 2 ways we deliver those, by mail and in person, especially for those who have applied for immediate need or expedited services. And our concentration and one of our most significant goals is to make sure that we're communicating with our client base, our recipients, if you will. And I know we'll have some discussion about that. And mailers, social media, and this staff will help us coordinate all of that. One of the major considerations and the importance of these folks in this, in our BCP, is that based on the maturity of the state of the vendor, there is a vendor out there that's growing, but they're not as a mature state as, say, JP Morgan was. And California is very, very complex. You cannot compare California to any other state, especially with our 58 counties and the way those things are administered. So from a BCP perspective, we think this is critical to the success of the implementation of the contract. And so that was number 1 that was asking about the BCP. But
quick follow-up.
Sure.
What's the frequency of the vendor transition? How often are you required to go out to bid? Every so often?
We are. We had a core 7-year contract.
Okay.
And we had the opportunity for 3 one-year extensions.
Okay, so I can take us to 10. Okay.
Yeah, for 10 years.
Okay.
And we executed those, and we can terminate any of that 3-year with 30 days notice.
I just asked when I looked at the cost of the transition to a new vendor. It was a question.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Second question was around, what should we be sensitive to during that 18-month period? I am happy to report the fact that we've been through this twice. One was an implementation, one was a transition. But we did have some substantive lessons learned and best practices. You hear a lot of that, but we have been tracking all that for 7 full years. The magnitude of the things that have to happen is there's approximately 55,000 retailers out there. I misspoke, Samantha, at our pre-hearing. There's about 55,000 to 60,000 retailers out there that we have to have a very coordinated effort for either, and that your big stores are what we call integrated. They have their own systems and we interact with them. Your smaller stores, we previously had provided POS devices just for EBT, and a lot of those had to be placed out, and that number out of the 55,000 was about 17,000. So that's a substantial. There's about 35,000 ATMs out there. We need to make sure that they're all working with our new vendor. So a lot of coordination with the retailers and the financial community. And then something that's near and dear to everybody and our program sponsors is we want to make sure that we have a very strong program integrity component. We've actually been very fortunate with EBT in California. If you remember the Target episode, literally millions of people, because we were an EBT card, which is closed looped. We did not, our clients did not lose a lot of that important data, and so we were protected in that regard. But there's other things, so we want to make sure that our vendor we coordinate their efforts that they have to submit in their bid proposal. So we're actually pretty comfortable about the transition period, and we'll continue to report out on that. So that was question number 2. 3 and 4 may require a little more discussion, and I'll hit those in 2 regards, and I'll call it system performance or system availability. In that 7-year core period, we've had about 2,555 days and we are operational 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. I'm amazed when I go in and look at the data. It's 3:30 a.m. in the morning in LA, and there's literally thousands of transactions occurring. So I don't know if they work during the day and they're shopping at night or what they do. Exactly. And so we understand the importance of availability is absolutely really important. Our overall performance has been actually, I could say, impeccable if we hadn't had one very bad day in October of 2013. And so what I want to discuss in that regard is that Todd and I were on the phone for probably the better part of 10 hours on what was a bridge call with our vendor, working through their operational aspects. It was on a Saturday, which is a high volume shopping day, needless to say, and all those clients were impacted, and that's unacceptable in that regard. If we had not had that incident, our availability would have been about 99.9%. I mean, we've had very few outages of even 45 minutes or so. Now, occasionally you might have somebody hit a telephone pole in Siskiyou County, and you might have a regional area that's out for a period of time. But overall, our performance would have been very good. Our vendor provided us a corrective action plan, and in that corrective action plan, we learned a lot of different things. We talked about the state needs to be involved in their change process a lot more. It happened to be their data center. They were doing a test, and it was human error. Somebody did something they shouldn't have done, and it took a long, and it did impact all 17 states that Xerox does business with. So two things, system performance and testing, we're a lot more involved. They have to approve things through us now. Probably it's not a surprise to you, the communication protocols, we really tightened up time frames of notifications to everybody, government stakeholders, clients, the Grocers Association, convenience stores, and so we've got that in place, and we haven't had any incidents for a period of time. So any questions regarding system performance?
Sure. I was just going to say that well, you go ahead, Senator Monty.
Well, just quick, you mentioned the identity protection, and you gave the Target example that the EBD cards weren't compromised. What information is potentially on that EBT card? Is it more than, what identifiers are in there that could potentially be compromised?
Only the card number, and they can't do anything with the card number. That's it. And,
so it's a card number, there's no social security number, other personal
there's no SIN numbers,
because it's not linked to a bank account as
That's
our
right.
ATM cards are.
Because
that's correct.
It's loaded with whatever
Your grant amount.
whatever your grant amount is.
That's right.
Thank you.
You know, and I'm just going to say that I remember that system failure day. And, you know, the reality, you know, that's not my issue. Well, I do have another pet peeve. That's the reality of technology. And we've, like, the Target incidents, I mean, the best and brightest and safest kind of in the industry have fallen victim. And so I think your service rate is to be commended, given the size and scope of the endeavor. I really do. I just want to tip my hat to you for that while I chew into you on something else.
Yes. Okay. Our fourth question was regarding, the question was, how is the department working to ensure that clients are aware of EBT that doesn't incur fees? I am pleased to report that about 2.5 years ago, our program sponsors put into place a surcharge work group, and so we have been meeting with the advocate community for about 2.5 years. And I'll tell you that the subject matter, there is no silver bullet. we focused on, there's 4 major areas that we can focus on to help our client base not incur surcharges. And that's when you go to withdraw your fees and you're not at what we call an in-network presence. You may get charged up to $3, in some instances $4 to withdraw your cash. And so that's a significant component of this issue, is the in-network presence. In our RFP, we've tried to improve that. So you know, our vendor that currently we have is not a bank, but U.S. Bank is their partner, and almost every major bank has an associated network. If you turn over one of your credit cards, you'll see Cyrus or Star or one of those kind of things. That's our in-network presence. So we're trying to broaden the in-network presence so there'll be more available ATMs for people to get cash-free. The other is an educational component, and that's where we've made a lot of progress in that work group. The other one is access to information, and in our new RFP, people are going to be able to get on their iPhones, go on their home computers, do a geospatial search on my neighborhood and find out where there's surcharge activities. They'll be able to check their balances. They'll be able to check what surcharges they had. We're also doing a pilot right now where we call clients on it's called robocall. If you've had excessive surcharges, we can identify that. We call you and an automated response tells you, did you know there's an opportunity for cash-free opportunities at these banks? And so we have a lot of things that we're trying to do in the education realm and the access to information. And then we have a significant change, a program change called the payment, yes, preservation. And I'll let Todd speak to that a little bit.
Essentially, Todd Bland again for the department. As we looked into this RFP, I think OSI and my staff, we really looked back at the history of what had gone on in a lot of aspects of it. And you know, when things had gone wrong in those moments, like on Saturday, we were like, I wish the contract said this. So you know, a lot of that went into going forward. I think there's two major elements in the RFP that really address the surcharge issue. One is we have a mandatory option to show us what an even larger network would look like in cost, so we'll know that. And then second, we have this benefit preservation system. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but essentially for each percentage reduction in the amount of surcharges charged, there's a specific payment that would go to the vendor. So it totally incents the vendor to be working towards reduced fees. And I just want to add something slightly related. Another coming out of that work group, another of the many elements there is some counties, and Alameda I think is the furthest along, are putting surcharge-free ATM machines in welfare offices. And I actually got an email while this hearing was going on from my staff saying, here's the picture of the one in the Alameda office with the big sign above it saying surcharge-free. It's so smaller, I'd show you guys the picture.
And it's only been,
again, as we learn from their experience, we'll try to share that out as a potential best practice. What did they have to do to get those machines in there? How did they partner? And how might that be replicable?
So my question, this was my issue a number of years ago. What about point of sale purchases? So I'm unbanked. I have my EBT card. I've not gone to one of the, I'm in Alameda, I've not cashed out my check at that one, but I go to the grocery store. Or I go to Metro to buy a bus pass. And so I'm treating it as my friends and neighbors treat their ATM card. I'm using it to handle my transactions. I go to pay my utility bill. And so what we were hearing those years ago was the point of sale dings. So every time you went to the market or Target, or so are the point of sale purchase fees, have they been a part of your conversation too?
yeah, there are no costs associated with purchases, none whatsoever. Doesn't how many purchases you make, an actual, whether you're at Target or the corner grocery store or 7-Eleven, or there are no charges associated with the use of
Now,
that.
is that new, or?
No, that's been a standard practice. If you, there's an opportunity, one of the things that we have encouraged folks to do is, and it's not a silver bullet as well, is cash back opportunities. So you go to Target, you buy diapers, you buy necessities, and in most instances, you can get up to $200 back. If you have, and there's no charge for that as well
Jerry.
to the beneficiary.
Have you conducted a survey of your benefit recipients to determine how many have smartphones? You talked about how you could use your computer or your smartphone to check out your balance and do all this kind of management. Do we have a sense of if what percentage of the population has access to those tools to do that?
We do not.
I feel like outside organizations have quoted numbers that are remarkably high, over
Yes.
50%.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean,
I question that. And so let's say that I don't. What are my other options? Is online my only option to determine my balance?
telephone as well.
You can
IVR
call.
and
Okay.
ARU, the Automated Response Unit.
Great.
Yes.
Senator Stone? Lonnie?
Good question.
LAO? Finance? Public comment?
Thank you. Jessica Bartholow with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. This is also my third EBT procurement. Been along for the ride since the beginning. In that early, in the first implementation, we had on the group of advocates 2 public benefit recipients. And, one of the top priorities for them was the privacy of their data. And, I was a young advocate at the time, and the response from the state and the counties was, well, why would you think they would use your data? Don't you know, caseworkers have more to do than just to look at what you're buying? And, I guess I didn't take as seriously as I should have. Little did I know that 10 years later, I'd spend a lot of my time trying to speak against the misnomers and the undermining, the very specific undermining of the reputation of low-income recipients of public assistance by very small portions of that data. And across the rest of the country today, we see states taking action to limit the use of public benefit EBT cards at nail salons or at casinos, et cetera. Right. So just as a reminder that, that as we move in the new world of technology, it is very important to continue to have conversations, not with just stakeholders, but the people who are impacted by the technology, because they might be able to see things that we couldn't possibly imagine. That being said, the work group that you heard today and the wonderful things coming from the work group are all true. And the work group, I want to point out that the work group started following the failed effort led by you, Senator Mitchell, to limit or end surcharges to public benefit recipients when they remove. Again, those dollars are still about $20 million a year. But coming from that failed attempt in the legislature, we did move to the work group, and it's been very has been a very successful work group, and has led to what I think is a really. I turned it off. What is a really good RFP, and we're looking forward to help, following along through implementation for that RFP. So just wanted to say thank you to the really diligent stewards of that EBT, and to you and your leadership, and for having this conversation. That we continue to have to find opportunities to reduce the dollar amount, and one thing I want to point to is, as much as outreach as we can do and informing of people that we can do, at the end of the day, what we're finding is that there just aren't banks in low-income communities, and that when there are banks, they're allowing lower dollar withdrawals. So if you go to East Oakland, if you go to Watts, the banks will cap the withdrawals at 100 or 200. Well, if you have a household of 3, you may end up with 3 withdrawals, and that's $6, if $2 charge, or $9 if a $3 charge at the end. I've seen CalWORKs recipients fall to pieces over the loss of a $10 or not be able to enroll. We had a woman testify 2 weeks ago in Education Committee. She couldn't enroll her kid in the after-school program because of the $10. The $10 is important, and we ought to find a way that our recipients aren't having to pay it to withdraw their rent money and their shoe money for the babies. So we continue to...
Amount of the award.
That's right. So we would like continued requests to the banking community, especially the banks that hold California's money. If they hold our money, they shouldn't charge us in order to have our poorest residents take the money out. And so we just encourage your continued vocal support of that vision. Thank you.
And I was reminded, as you talked about, you said other states. We too, I was my first or second year in the Assembly, Senator Stone, and there was a bill saying that you couldn't, use your EBT card to cash out at casinos or card rooms. Well, the reality was the card rooms in the Gardena area, you could cash out and not pay a surcharge. And so people learned that, and that's what they did, because you could get all of your money with no surcharge, because that's kind of at least then, the way card rooms and casinos operated. So this notion that people were using their public benefit to go to the casino just wasn't valid. It was a way in which you could get all of your money with no surcharge.
Well, and just to follow up on that point, we didn't ever have a committee hearing kind of as a reflection of that experience here in California. Remember, it was card clubs, casinos, strip clubs, it was nail salons,
Right.
marijuana clubs, et cetera. And when we got numbers of calls from people, we never got any calls from people saying, I can't use my benefit here, I'm so upset.
Yeah.
But we did get calls from people saying, they told me I couldn't spend my money at a strip club. I didn't ever use my money at a strip club, and they were so confused about where
Offended.
where the moms were, right, offended. Where are the moms that are spending the money?
Right.
They didn't know who they were, and they weren't
Right.
one of them. And it was a very
It was offensive. It was a solution looking for a problem. Next witness, please.
Yeah, Kevin Asner, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organizations. The reason that we did an EPT thing is because they were spending money every month sending a check.
Yeah.
And there was a cost to that.
Right.
And then there was a cost for people to get their, what they call authorization to purchase food stamps. And they would go to food stamp center and get the coupons. And that had a cost. And there was a cost to the replacement. And if you estimate the savings that EBT did when it changed in 2006 in today's dollars, we saved $60 million a year. Yet we, welfare recipients, have to fork out $20 million a year so the state could save $60 million a year. I would hope that this committee should do something, language saying that if there are any fees, you should basically, the state should pay for it. Rather than saving $60 million, they could save $40 million.
So the challenge with that, Mr. Zlanian, is not knowing how many times I'm going to go to an ATM or use it as a point of sale purchase. So how could the state incur the fee as opposed to me at the point of use or point of sale? I mean, I agree with you in theory. The question is in practice.
In practice, okay, I'm sorry.
Senator Stone.
Out of curiosity, what is the gross value of the EBT in the state of California every month? How much money is flowing into our economy?
Ooh.
Well, okay, the cash benefits in CalWORKs for a year, I'm just off the top of my head, are about $3.5 billion. So if that was 3.6, we could have divided by 12 and gotten 300 million? No, yeah, I don't know. Did I get that one right? Then that's but those are dollars circulating within California's economy. Then on top of that, the EBT system also serves the county GA systems and some other rather small programs. So we'd be adding on to that. And then the CalFresh is not cash, but it's money running through the system, and it's about 7 or 8 billion, so it's a lot.
So $7
It's
or
in the
$8
hundreds.
billion. So,
Easily 10 billion a year between
10
food and
billion
cash,
a
maybe
year.
11 or
So,
12.
that's a lot of buying power. So has the state looked into, I know it sounds crazy, maybe, exclusive networks of grocery stores that might be willing to accept the card, to not only charge no fee for card users to get their money from their CalWorks checks, but maybe even if they get this exclusive population, and there are some statewide chains, or you can break it up into regions where they actually would give a discount even on groceries. We talked about trying to capitalize on going to these the food fairs, the farmers markets. Why aren't we capitalizing on this tremendous spending potential and getting vendors to bid on exclusive contracts to save the taxpayer, or not save taxpayer, because we're spending the money no matter what, but to give a bigger bang for the buck for the beneficiaries that don't have to start worrying about these fees, and they know if they go to XYZ grocery store chain, they're going to get a 5% discount on their purchases. Is there any federal laws prohibiting that?
Well, I think the issue of exclusivity, I've never thought about it quite in the way you are. What I would say is there on the SNAP side, on the federal food side, they approve all the retailers for that. And I believe we just sort of it tends to just follow along for the CalWorks. So we would sort of have control over the buying power of the CalWorks.
Well, let me just.
But to split apart, I'm not. Seems like something to think about.
So let me give you just an example. Okay. It goes back to my profession. When I was, I've been a pharmacist now for 34 years now. It's hard to believe. And a new company came out. It was an HMO. It was called Pacific Care, right? I was a Pacific Care provider. But what Pacific Care did was they said, you know what? We want to save money. We want to make money for our insurance plan and reduce costs for our subscribers. So we're going to contract with one chain store that represents drugstores throughout the state of California. And we went to 5 different of these chains and said, which one of you is going to give us the lowest fees for an exclusive contract that we send all of our patients to you? Now, of course, I didn't like it as an independent pharmacist because I lost my market share. But the insurance company found, I think it was Save on Drug at the time, that was the beneficiary, and lowered the fees that usually pharmacists were getting at the time by about 50%. So saved the insurance company a fortune, saved premiums for the buyers of insurance. But when you talk about this kind of financial wherewithal, my suggestion is why not leverage it and say to the retailers, which one of you is going to give our beneficiaries the best deal? And the best deal is we don't charge them any transaction fees. And a best deal is if you give them a 3% discount on the groceries that they buy through your grocery store. So I throw that out there. Again, I try to be innovative in my approach, but money is power.
How about we take it to our work group and think about it? I can think of some problems, though. Because the other side of the coin of surcharge-free is cash access itself. Safe cash access in your neighborhood. If we restricted the purchases to, say, a certain number of grocery stores, those might not exist in all neighborhoods statewide, and although perhaps the clients were getting a lower, again, I'm not quite sure how we'd even operationalize that. So I think there's at least a balancing issue of access
Or maybe we
itself.
set the standard. Maybe we say, you know what, if you want to participate in this program, you're going to not charge any transaction fees for those people that need to cash out, and where you're going to give a 3% discount on groceries.
It's not the retailers who charge these fees. It's the banks at the ATMs out of network who are tacking them on.
But these retail entities, for this scale of financial
You're saying they should
input,
offer a discount essentially
may absorb those fees when you're talking about $10 billion.
But I don't think that's where the transaction takes place. If they're at the store and asking for $100 cash back, there's no bank charging a fee of $3. It's when they went to the ATM that wasn't in network.
Gotcha.
I think that's our problem. But I think the idea of our buying power, I know that EDD had an interesting procurement when they switched to there's an EPC card? Yeah, they have a different model of branded card, and they did get some of that buying power kind of went into their contract. Although ultimately I think we concluded what they did wasn't going to work best for us, at least in the short run. So we'll take it back to our work group to think about it a little bit more. But I think there's some problems, but let's not make snap decisions. We'll go to the work group and report back.
I just say think out of the box and do what we can to help these beneficiaries out as much as we can.
I think they should invite Senator Stone and I to the work group, but that's just me. All right, we've heard public comment, LAO, and finance. We're going to move on to our final item for today, which is BCP number 9, horizontal integration. I just love that phrase. Okay, see ya. Senator Stone?
Do you want to vote on this
Before you
last
leave, do you have a position on this BCP, number 9?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It's a great start.
We'll put that, yeah. Well, you've got one down, 2 to go.
That in the ATM bank.
Yes, we'll put that in the bank, right. See if we can withdraw it with no fees, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Adam Dondro, Assistant Director for Horizontal Integration with Department of Social Services. This request is simply to extend the unit that was approved 2 years ago regarding horizontal integration with the department. It was approved for 2-year limited term, and we believe that this is an ongoing need. The basis around horizontal integration is that throughout Health and Human Services, the populations overlap greatly. And historically, we've built our systems in silos, and so the CalFresh program focuses on providing CalFresh benefits, and the CalWorks program focuses on providing CalWorks benefits, and so on and so forth, when in reality, these are all the same people. And so what this unit is about is trying to create a culture shift to focus on a client-centric view of things. So instead of focusing individually on program by program, we focus on what are the needs of these clients. And what that does is it takes you back to the client, which is what it's all about. And so there's obviously a lot of ways that works. This started focusing on the Affordable Care Act, and we've done a great deal there. We've heard a few times mentioned one of our big efforts right now is shifting from applicants who come in through the Covered California system and get a referral for those programs to make it so that they can apply then and there on the spot for those benefits. As we all know, if you sit down with your taxes and everything in front of you, you need to apply for benefits, and then 3 weeks later somebody calls you back to try to go through it again, you're much less likely to follow through. And so it's efforts like that that we focus on to try to make things easier for the beneficiary, easier for the eligibility workers and the county workers, and altogether more efficient.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Senator Monning? Responded to everything in the agenda. Could you please respond to question number 2 on page 42 of the agenda?
Absolutely. So it's been a ramping up process. As you can imagine, culture change of this sort takes a while. There's been decades building up these silos and suddenly having someone come in working across it. So one of my favorite examples is I've spent a lot of time bringing Department of Social Services to the table at places it hasn't historically been. So with the Affordable Care Act, they're moving 1 million miles a minute at Covered California trying to get things done. And there was a very simple problem in terms of a fix that they needed to implement. And everyone said, well, it's very, well, not simple, nothing's simple. But what we do is we'll go through this process, we'll have to take the systems down, we'll stop this process from happening for a 2-week period, we'll implement this and move forward. And had I not been at the table to bring it back to our experts of social services, nobody would have realized that those are the same systems being used to provide social services. You take those down for 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks of CalFresh recipients getting benefits, some of which they wouldn't be eligible for. And unlike Medi-Cal, in CalFresh, if you get benefits you weren't eligible for, you owe those back. And these beneficiaries would have gone and bought groceries for their families, and a month or 2 later would have gotten a letter saying, you owe us cash back for those groceries that you bought by no fault of their own. And so it's things like that where we're at the table bringing that more collaborative view that are helpful, along with the effort to allow applicants from the CalHERE system in covered California to more easily apply for their benefits and social services, so on and so forth.
The future in terms of efficiency and helping the beneficiaries. LAO, any comment?
Good afternoon. Once again, Lourdes Morales with the Legislative Analyst Office. Last fall, our office released a report on this topic, looking at the state's efforts to horizontally integrate in light of the ACA. In that report, we found that there are numerous benefits to horizontal integration, some of which were mentioned by Mr. Dondro, such as the reduction in duplicative work and benefits to clients that are seeking state services. To the extent that these permanent positions could further in a horizontal integration in the state, we do think the proposal is reasonable. However, we would add that in that report, we also noted that there could be a benefit to the state from having a clear vision from the legislature on its future intent for horizontal integration. We know that in this sector, there's lots of stakeholders, and it'll be a long-term iterative process. Just so to the extent that there is some direction, we think it could help move this process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment, please, on this final BCP.
Jessica Bartholow, Western Center on Law and Poverty. And I would just like to note that the legislature, specifically the Senate and the Assembly 2 years ago, passed legislation showing their intent to support horizontal integration. It was vetoed by the governor. There is, I think, a great support for doing this within the advocacy community, within the legislature, and clearly within the administration. Not just across CalFresh and CalWorks and Medi-Cal, but also other programs like childcare and WIC and school meals. And so we are eager to get authority for ongoing staff, because we do think that having a staff that is looking across the programs in the way that DSS staff does through their horizontal integration program is not just beneficial, but necessary for us to keep moving forward. On this note, however, we would like to see some commitment from the administration that we will be using the 887 waiver monies, additional monies available through the federal government to implement IT systems to support horizontal integration. And we hear that there is support for it. We just haven't kind of secured that support in a way that we feel comfortable. So if we can continue the conversation about the use of those additional dollars and make sure that we don't lose this opportunity that is time limited, we would like to see the leadership in the Senate Budget Committee in doing so. Thank you.
Kevin Asner, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organization. My testimony is ditto to what she said. In addition to that, we will support the BCP. In fact, you should double it. Thank you.
I've been given the charge by Mr. Aslanian. But the recommendation before us today is to approve the BCP, and are you okay with that, Senator Monty? Excellent, and that will be a 3-0 recommendation. Thank you very much for your time and attention to these critical issues today, and Sub 3 stands adjourned.